back again. Video 78. Today's video 78 is about the mysteries of the tarot. So again, we're going to start with the numbers, right? So let's look at 78. There's 78 cards in the tarot, okay? There's 22 for the Hebrew letters of the alphabet, and those are called the major arcana, okay? So out of the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, there's 7 letters that are called doubles, right? And so if you divide 22 by 7, you get approximately pi, approximation of the ratio between the radius of a circle and its circumference. Very important, pi. So again, this relates to the circular versus spherical versus, cubic geometry. And so this is very important. But there's a lot of keys that we can see with the tarot. So like I mentioned, the 7 is really important. So we have 78 cards. So that gives us a 7 and an 8, right? So on the Tree of Life here, I've done some little drawings. Oh, look here, we got Mercury, we got Ganesh. This is the Ganesh mantra and our favorite 888. But so we got Mercurius over here, represents Hod, the 8th Sephirot, or Sephirah rather, and this represents Sephirah number 7, which is Venus or Netzach. So Mercury and Venus. And then below we have the moon, right? So it's this triangle right here. And then here's the earth below, right? But so let's look at 78, right? Card number 7 is the Chariot. Card number 8 is Strength, right? 78. So the sun and the moon. So we just went through the new moon. I made several videos relating to that topic. And the moon, okay, on the Tree of Life is Tet. And it represents the womb. And it represents the astral plane, they say. And to me, I think of this a lot as a subconscious mind, right? So the subconscious mind and our dreaming mind, where we can astral travel in our energy body, right? Like our mental body. We can enter into this other alternate space. And if you get into lucid dreaming, then really that's where things really start to take off. So if you think of this moon, I mean, this is a really key concept to the Tantra, because the moon in Tantra is, it's kind of like the blank screen that we use. All our tantric rituals are dealing with the imagination, and you're imprinting ideas into your subconscious mind. And essentially, if you practice the Yidam, what you're doing is you're resculpting your mental body of yourself to an immortal, transcendent, enlightened form of one of these Yidam deities. And depending on which deity you choose, it has different powers and aptitudes that you use that deity as a thought form to develop these powers and aptitudes within yourself. So usually when you're doing these visualizations, many of them use what's called a moon disk, right? So you think of it like a big full white moon. It's almost like a projector screen. And as you're growing these thought forms in your consciousness, you're basically building them in this moon matrix, if you will. I don't know if people watch that movie, Doctor Strange. It's a really cool graphics movie and lots of awesome computer animation, but they're depicting tantric magic in there in the most direct way that I've ever seen. It blew me away super hard to watch that movie. But what they have is they have this thing called the mirror dimension, right? Which is where it's kind of like this safe place, like a playground, where you can practice your tantra magic without causing karma in the real world. So it's kind of like almost as if you're drafting a plan of a house in AutoCAD or something. It's like a simulation, right? But in this mirror dimension, if you watch that movie, everything's fluidic. And whoever's the most powerful wizard can sculpt and steer that mirror dimension according to their will. And so they can do battles inside there and stuff like that, right? So in essence, that's what reality is. And some people's minds are more powerful than others. And so they can use their mental power to sculpt reality, right? There's other movies that relate to that, like Dreamscape. Did you ever see? That's a really old one. Dreamscape's about this government project about lucid dreaming where they use it to program people. It's really similar to Inception. I know that was a huge blockbuster, really, really popular film. And so, yeah, you see the same kind of thing in that movie. When they're in the dreamscape, the reality is kind of fluidic, right? And they can sculpt it more or less at their will. And so this is what the new moon represents. In Tibetan Tantra, really, the lunar cycle is of supreme importance. And you start at the beginning, and then you gradually build the Dakini energy, right? And so at the full moon, like at the new moon, it's like the inception and the gestation and the incubation period. Like it first combines the seed, and then it grows and grows and grows. Okay, so we're getting into the 22 and the 7, right? The 22 major arcana are divided. Okay, Fool is number 0. It's not really part of the main pattern. So the main pattern is these 3 triumphs. They're called triumphs or trumps. That's where we get the word trump card. And all the major arcanas are called trumps, right? So there's 3 groups of 7 trumps, and each one is called a triumph. The first triumph is 1 through 7, which brings us here to the chariot, right? That's the moon. Okay. Now, if you think about it, the moon cycle is divided into 4 Sabbaths, 4 7-day periods, right? So there's 2 Sabbaths of growth and development, and there's 2 Sabbaths of the waning moon, where it shrinks down and disappears. So this is so key to everything in magic. Okay, so we're looking at the bottom triangle of the tree of life right there: Earth, Moon, Mercury, and Venus. So Mercury and Venus are called inferior planets because they're closer to the sun than Earth. And so they're always between the Earth and the sun from our perspective, and that's why they're represented this way on the tree. So basically, these are beginners. You start as a zealotor, you start in Asya, you start in the material world on Earth, right? But you're trying to go up the tree and work with all these planetary energies. So the first 2 that you start working with is Mercury and Venus, right? And those represent the intellect, the mathematical concept mind of Mercury, Ganesh, with his numbers and all his structure and order and function and all this mathematical reasoning and spatial reasoning. Okay, that's one. Some people say that's the left hemisphere of the brain. That's dominant in like mathematicians and scientists, right? So then the other hemisphere of the brain is the emotional mind, right? That's Venus. She's into shapes and colors and textures and beauty and all the sensual comforts of the world, the physical world of life, and the vital force of the female power. And so Mercurius is all about structure and function. He's a designer, he's an architect, he's a computer programmer, he's a mathematician and a geometer, right? So he's all about function. He wants stuff that makes sense and that has an orderly pattern and fits together and it's predictable and it's expressible in words and numbers and it can be encoded. He's the master code encryption master. All the languages are his. He creates all words and communications and messaging, right? Mercury's the messenger of the gods. So messaging requires words and letters and these concrete symbols that always have the same meaning. And that any person who sees those symbols within that culture and context, they'll know what those letters and words mean. Theoretically, this doesn't exist anymore because everyone's retarded and they don't know how to communicate. So their Mercury's all fucked, They're living in pure Babylon, Satanism, just toys and fetishistic objects in their possessions and their products, which are all disposable, right? They're all impermanent, right? But the mind, ideas are bulletproof, they say, right? The mind and the intellect is always applicable, whether you're poor or rich. If your mind is fucking strong, you got an infinite resource of wealth, and that's why Mercury is the god of wealth. So when you're trying to create wealth, you need to combine these two, or any magic, really, any kind of thought form process, okay? So as I was saying with the moon, this chariot in the moon, okay, the chariot is the Merkaba in Kabbalah. This is the Merkaba. So this is the astral body or the energy body or the mental body. So it's timeless, limitless. It can go to all the spheres. It can go to all the planets, right? It's like Odin's horse Sleipnir. It can go everywhere. But the crazy thing is, okay, this is why there's 78 cards, because we got the chariot and strength, okay? The moon and the sun. So the chariot is your astral body, right? That's your mental body. It's built out of the same substance that like your sperm and eggs are made out of. It's your sexual force, okay? That's what it's made out of. If you waste it and you dissipate it and you bust a nut all the time, or you use your sexuality in like this non-procreative concept, right? Your brain is dumb. You don't have any brain. You don't have any cerebral spinal fluid rising up to nurture the brain and give you astral vision and give you this lucid dreaming, mental body. And this is the basis of all Tantra. And so if you're nutting everywhere And you're wasting and using your mental energy to imagine corrupt thoughts and imaginings and wishes and desires. Like you're manifesting all that shit. You're manifesting your own hell and Babylon into earth, right? So let's check this card out. Hanged Man, right? See the circle at the top and the grid of squares at the bottom? That's everything I'm trying to explain to you with Odin and Frey, okay? That's everything. So the circle is a symbol of infinity and endlessness. And the material grid is the death grid, the life and death, birth and death grid of samsara. Well, it's also, they both have a cyclic aspect to them, I suppose. But that's why he's dying on the cross, right? He's dying at that 90-degree angle of death and limitations and time and matter, okay? And the four elements without spirit. But he knows above, his source and his root is above. It's in the spherical plane of infinite life, okay? So if you want to be spiritual, that's what it means. It's not materialism, okay? It's not buying products and listening to all this terrible, hellish, satanic pop music and all these rappers and all this fucking degraded ass booty rap, dude. It's fucking terrible. How can anybody call themselves spiritual and fucking partake in that? It's like poison for your brain and your subconscious mind. It's terrible. It's creating hell. It's putting a seed and a sperm of hell that's germinating inside your consciousness so that you reproduce your own hell. So we don't want to do that. What we're going to do instead is we're going to build the astral body and the mental body, okay? Well, how do we do that? We control the sexual force, okay? The lion is the id, and it's the sexual force, and it's the desires and the drives. And they're controlled by Eve. They're controlled by the empress and the woman to create life and to create productive, natural abundance, right? And the other thing you have to control is your mind. You have to have an intellect. You have to have reason, okay? You have to have the ability to override your body's lusts and understand how to create, how to have the form imposing structure of the intellect to decide what's helpful and not helpful, what makes sense and doesn't make sense, what's harmonious and unharmonious, what's logical and illogical, what's true and what's false, through reasoning, okay? Reasoning, not lust, not desire, okay? Not animal instincts and urges, okay? So if you accomplish that, if you harmonize the intellectual power of Mercury and the power of communication and symbol literacy, okay, and you combine that with your sense of beauty and aesthetics. See the moon there with the Empress? The lunar force of the female versus the solar force of the male, right? They fuse and combine in Yesod, in the astral plane. You fuse them and combine them there, and you build thought forms. So like in Tantra, in Tibetan Buddhism, you visualize, like, for example, the Vajra. You know, the Vajra is indestructible, timeless force that pervades all space and time, and it can accomplish everything. It's unobstructable. You can't stop it. It's timeless. It's deathless. Nothing can cut it, a diamond. It's the strongest, hardest thing there is, like a lightning bolt, okay? So you grow that force. You grow the Vajra force. Like you plant the seed. The seed of the Vajra force is the mantra, right? That mantra, like here's Ganesha mantra. There's 4 copies of it around its seed syllable, the Gam, right? The Gam is the seed syllable. It's one syllable that gives birth to the whole expanse of the Ganesh mantra, which generates form, okay? Sustains form and overcomes obstacles, right? So what you're trying to do is, on this lunar surface of the moon disk, you cultivate the seed, you plant the seed, the Bija mantra, and then you grow your Ganesh, or you grow your Vajra, you grow this mental force and this power, okay? And you're sculpting. Use your sense of order and harmony, and you use your sense of beauty, okay? And you sculpt on the astral plane. You sculpt in your dreams, and you sculpt in your mental landscape. And that's how you create this downstream causality and bring things into manifestation. So use these 2 hemispheres. Use the logical reasoning mind of the intellect, and use the emotional, intuitive mind of creativity and beauty and form, okay? Function and form. Mercury and Venus, okay? You fuse their powers combined right there. And so then we get into the lunar cycle. Like we just had this period right here where the moon and the sun were together at the new moon, right? The 78, right? The Venus, Mercury, and the sun, moon combined. So this is how we create. And this is so deep. Like it took me at least 20 years to learn and understand what I'm describing to you right now. But these are the forces within us that we can all work with to create and manifest reality into being by our pure will. But you have to have self-control in the most extreme way. You have to control not only your conscious mind and the activities of your body and the speech that comes out of your mouth and the thought forms that you project, but you have to control your unconscious mind You have to control the thought forms that come up in your dreams. You have to be able to sculpt them and work with them. And that's how you become a wizard, and that's how you sculpt reality. And the tarot is a very important tool. And remember the 3 triumphs, the 3 groups of 7, the 3 Sabbats of the tarot.